Hey guys, guess what? In this episode, I'm gonna be talking about Alexander Nikishin. Welcome back once again for another episode. And remember, I have a great partnership with SeatGeek. You get $20 off of your first purchase if you use promo code Caniac Reports, all one word. It's a great deal. If you want to save some money on tickets from a local venue near you. I know there are people that listen to us not just here in North Carolina. So if they use SeatGeek, then there is a great opportunity. Another thing too is up and coming Monday's episode. I'm be having a Q&A. So if you have any questions that are Canes related, please email them to me or DM me or however means of communication. Just remember in the description on both if you're watching us on YouTube or Apple, Spotify, whatever, my email and also the social medias that I have are in the description below. So, or at least in the description of the episode. And another thing too, the month of August is coming up. So you're not going to have any news in those episodes. Again, if there's anything that is big breaking news for the Hurricanes, I'll probably make like a 10 to 15-minute episode just telling you how it is along with the scheduled episode that you're going to be getting because that's a month that I mean obviously I am taking a break from the podcast, but you're still getting a lot of pre-recorded episodes on those Mondays and Friday releases. So, again, it's a best of both worlds type of thing. I get a break, you guys still get episodes. So that's kind of it for the podcast stuff. And now I'm going to talk about things around the league. So, the Hockey Canada trial, for those of you who have been keeping up with it, it came out today. But all the players in that trial were found not guilty. Now, in the podcast, with me just being alone, I'm just going to leave that interpretation up to you. I am going to leave the politics aside, uh, because I know this can bring out controversial opinions, whether you like it or not. So again, I'm not going to state my opinions on here. I'm just going to tell you what happened, and that is what happened. So I'm just going to leave it at that. The next thing is Blake Wheeler. He retires after 1,172 games. And boy, was he a heck of a hockey player. Very, very good. So, congratulations to his retirement. And I really hope he does well post hockey. So, congrats to Blake Wheeler. He played with a few teams. I believe his first team might have been with Boston, but I know most of his tenure was with Winnipeg, and so I just want to congratulate Blake Wheeler. Another thing too, and I thought this was interesting, so I wonder how this is going to go. But the NHL and the NHLPA have announced a partnership with the Italian Soccer League Serie A. So honestly, if I don't mind them doing partnerships, I really don't. I just hope when it comes to the whole league and probably the Players Association too, when it comes to these type of partnerships, I hope it is the purpose of those partnerships obviously is to help grow the game. That's the biggest thing, and I'm sure that's probably in their mind too. I would hope, but if it isn't, then I'm just like, then why are you doing it? You're trying to raise the game of hockey. I think that should be the sole purpose of these partnerships, at least. Now, there probably are other things which I'm fine with if they want to like add-ons, but I think that should be the biggest thing: is growing the sport of hockey, the growing the NHL at least. So that's just my take when I saw that, and I'm just like, you know what? Good for them, as long as it's raising the sport. or the league. So another thing too that I do want to talk about is that there are dates for the arbitration hearings. They have been released. Now, I'm not going to talk about all these players for the dates because these are mainly players that we really don't know much about. They're not big name players. But speaking of a big name player that was going to go into arbitration, he is no longer going to the arbitrator anymore because he has officially signed, and that is Capo Caco. He signed a 3-year, $4.525 million contract. And you know what? It's a deal that I think Seattle's like, we're going to make this a bridge deal. We're going to see if he can actually sustain the level of great play that he had when he got traded to Seattle. Honestly, that trade when Kako was traded to Seattle from the Rangers and Rangers got William Borgen, I think so far that's been a trade that's benefited both teams. As much as I hate the Rangers, I think Borgen has actually been playing pretty decently for them. So that's kind of it around the league, quite a bit actually. And for the Hurricanes, it's still quiet. Obviously, to me, honestly, I think at this point, like I know the Hurricanes have like $10.6 million in cap space, but I think at this point, if they were to make a trade, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible for them to make a trade, probably like maybe in late August or August somewhere. But I just think at this point, the most likely scenario of us seeing a trade is probably going to be around trade deadline or probably once we get to Thanksgiving break, because that's usually around the time where teams are like, okay, yeah, we know we're not going to make it, or yeah, we know we are going to make the playoffs. So I this offseason, I think it's been very, very weird because it's not like what it was last offseason when every team was done within the first week of July. And I don't think any team's done. I think there are teams that are looking to add. It's just, I think we all expected this offseason to be a little bit more fun as a whole because of trades happening throughout the summer. But it hasn't, again, it just hasn't really happened yet. And I was hoping the Ehlers signing that the Hurricanes made was going to spur things on, but it just hasn't, which is just really, really weird. But the Hurricanes did make some news, and I believe they kind of rounded out their roster with Chicago with these moves. There could be a couple more left, but I think this could be it with the roster down in Chicago. But you have Roden Seeley and Ryan Suzuki both signing a 1-year, 2-way contract. Ronan Seeley, he signs a $813,000 contract if he were to play in the NHL, and it'd be $80,000 in the AHL. For Suzuki, to me, this was actually pretty interesting. Now, with Suzuki, he's getting paid less to play in the NHL than Seeley is. He's getting paid $775,000. But the pro to that type of contract, though, is he does get paid more in the AHL. He gets paid $175,000. So I guess it kind of evens itself out. But I just, again, when I saw the details of that contract, I did find it a little bit interesting. So that's kind of it of stuff kind of around the league. So not a lot of news, not a lot of stuff with the Hurricanes that I have seen since recording this episode on a lovely Thursday evening. And yeah, so I am going to be talking about Nikishin for the next part of this episode because I think it's warrant a discussion here. I actually do. I think there are a lot of players that, or sorry, not players, but fans that think he is over the moon. He's the next Kale McCarr, and he very well could be. And that's kind of it. That they think he is going to be the next McCarr, and I think how he gets there is probably viewed a little bit differently. I think there are fans that I might be on the side on where listen, he's just a rookie. Don't like overuse him a ton. But it's just how he gets there, I think, is what fans differ. I think all of us probably all of us know he's going to be a Kale McCarr type of player, possibly. But how he gets there, I don't think it's going to be this season. Personally, I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, if he does get to be a Kale McCarr type of level by January, boy, that'd be awesome and would definitely be needed for this Hurricanes team. But I think there are also fans too that are expecting the Kitchen to be that McCarr type of level right out of the gate, and I just don't think that's going to happen. So, by the way, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about him. I think those are mainly the two sides. And well, I think that the hype is real, obviously, and that is the title of this episode is the Alexander Nikishin hype real? I do think it is. And I'm just going to announce his KHL stats here. The KHL obviously is a league out in Russia. It's the top league. And I can tell you his stats are impressive. In 2022 to 23 in 65 games, he got around 11 goals, 44 assists, 55 points. That is just insane right there in the KHL. And I think if you talk to anybody who probably makes a living talking about hockey or the NHL for some matter, they will tell you that the second best league in the whole world, right behind the NHL, is the KHL. It is a brutal league. It's very, very tough. So seeing a guy like Nikishin making those points is a very impressive. In 2023 to 2024, Nikishin in 67 games got 17 goals, 39 assists, 56 points. Again, he is doing pretty good. He's kind of maintaining that point percentage and he's just showing how good he is. The only difference is he's scoring a little bit more than his previous season. And then in the 2024-2025 season, in 61 games, he got 17 goals, 29 assists, 46 points. So while his point production has dropped, the amount of games he played kind of dropped as well. So I'm not saying I don't think that's alarming to be honest, just because all the scouts that I have seen has labeled him as one of the top defensemen outside of the NHL. In fact, I'm sure all of us even got to see him too, and we did in this past year's playoffs. So in 4 games, 0 goals, 1 assist, 1 point. I mean, he was a -5. This is how I viewed him in the playoffs. He's a player, and I would say probably in the same boat as Scott Morrow, a player that got put into the fire. And as much as I have high hopes for Nikishkin. I really, really do. I mean, his first playoff games in the NHL are his first games, and well, I think if you probably talk to Nikishin, I think he probably say that is awesome. I think on the other hand, you could also say from a development standpoint, probably not the best thing for a player to be put into. So him being in the playoffs, I think the first game, if you guys remember, was against Washington. It was away. And here's the thing, he started out rough. He really, really did. He was responsible for one of Washington's goals. Fortunately, obviously, we know if you watch the playoffs, that goal was overturned. But he really did start out rough. I thought he got better as the game went along, and I thought he got better as he played more games, especially when we got to the Florida series. But I one thing I do want fans to be guarded about is we've had several I would say probably highly sought after defensemen that are prospects before that haven't really hit that level. Now, I would say we've probably found a diamond in the rough, as I like to call it, in a few players. And these highly projected defensemen that were drafted before, I am going to kind of list these out because I think it is something to take notice. I'm not saying by making this list that Nikishin's going to be terrible. I think he is the outlier. I think Nikishin is one of those prospects that is going to be that player that actually hits his potential, because you look at a lot of these defensemen that we have drafted over these years, they never hit their potential with us. So, to me, the first defenseman that I noticed by looking at our draft history, Jack Johnson, and he refused to actually sign with the Hurricanes. He was a very highly projected defenseman, but he refused to sign with them. So, I'm not going to blame him on the Hurricanes, but at the same time, it is something to, I would say, take notice, considering he was a pretty high draft pick. The next player, I wouldn't say he was highly projected, but I thought he was probably maybe just a little bit overused, and that was, if you guys remember him, Jamie McBain, probably not the best example, but he was drafted in the second round of 2006. To me, the next player we struck gold with, I thought. Now, obviously, he had his defensive problems, but the next player we drafted, Justin Falk. He was drafted in the second round of the 2010 draft. And I'd be lying if the Hurricanes were like, he was a bad player for them, because he was very, very effective, especially in the dark ages. And you'll hear me mention his name again in an upcoming episode in August. So, Falk, I really do think Hurricanes struck gold with him. So I think the Hurricanes kind of really did find a winner. The next player, and this is when I'm kind of starting to get into the defenseman that we drafted very highly that never really panned out to be that projected defenseman. Ryan Murphy, if you guys remember him, drafted 12th overall in the 2011 draft. And we gave him several opportunities, if you guys remember him. And I remember him too. Again, I grew up watching the Hurricanes ever since they won the Cup in 2006. So Ryan Murphy, he was given a lot of opportunities, but he just could not crack the NHL Hurricanes lineup. And I will admit, I was a little bit disappointed, but if you look at the next two defensemen, and I'm only talking about like notable defensemen, I'm not looking at all the defensemen that the Hurricanes drafted, or else this would be like a 2-hour episode. But the next defenseman, I think you could say the same with Justin Falk. Hurricanes struck gold, and I would say they struck more than gold. They probably struck a diamond in Jacob Slavin, drafting 120th overall in the 2012 draft, fourth round. And boy, was that a steal. Huge steal. And I'm sure all you guys know just how important Slavin is to not only the blue line, but to the team. I mean, he's part of the leadership. So I'm not going to, I mean, Slavin and the Hurricanes were able to draft him in the fourth round. Hats off to the Hurricanes for making that selection. And the next player that they struck gold with, I wouldn't say probably a diamond like Slavin, but he was still really good for us. And that was Brett Pesce, drafted 66 overall in the 2013 draft. So again, you have two players that really helps the Hurricanes. They were kind of core-ish players, because I mean, I do consider Brett Pesce somewhat of a core player ever since he left. So two defensemen that, I mean, nobody thought they were going to be the defenseman that saw today. So I think that's good. But now, I, to me, there are 4 defensemen I have on this list after them that I'm just like, they never really hit their potential. And you guys might remember if you started following the Hurricanes when Ron Francis took over as general manager. So one of the first things Francis did as general manager, he drafted Hayden Fleury, if you guys remember, 7th overall in the 2014 draft. And Hayden Fleury was a highly projected defenseman when we picked him up. And in fact, I would say you probably should be if you're drafted in the top 10. But here's the thing with Fleury. He never hit that potential. And I think we all know that if you remember watching him. I would argue Fleury right now is probably a 3rd pairing defenseman at the most. So another defenseman that did not hit his potential. And the next defenseman, I think this is a player that really did not hit his potential. So much high hopes for this guy. And that was Noah Hanifin in the 2015 draft. And obviously, Hanifin was traded to Calgary. But I remember when we drafted Noah, like this was a guy that was spread to be like, I kept hearing the name Scott Niedermayer type of defenseman. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, just search up Scott Niedermayer on YouTube. He was really, really good with Anaheim. But Noah Hanifin, I mean, do I think he's a bad defenseman right now? No. I would argue that his performance is way above the likes of Hayden Fleury and the next player I'm going to talk about, which is Jake Bing. But Hayden Fleury, he was projected, I would argue, back when we drafted him, a top 2 defenseman. Obviously, he's with Vegas right now. But I don't think Vegas fans are going to say, yeah, he's a top 2 defenseman. Now, I think he's probably a top 4 defenseman. And I'd tolerate that if any Vegas fan or Hurricanes fan told me that they're like, yeah, I think he's top 4, but not top 2. So that I would probably agree with. And the next player, Jake Bean, drafted 13th overall in the 2016 draft. And that's another defenseman. To me, a lot more like Hayden Fleury than Noah Hanifin. That really never hit his potential. He was projected to be a very, very good top 4 offensive defenseman. And now he's a defenseman that, just like Hayden Fleury, his best is a 3rd pair defenseman in the NHL right now. Playing for Calgary, but I remember when he played for us, like, trust me, I was excited. I was like, man, this player's going to be great. He's going to be wonderful. But he never panned out. And I hate to put him on this list, but we did trade him very, very recently. And I just think Scott Morrow. Now, I'm not willing to write off Scott Morrow yet, like I am with Hayden Fleury or Jake Bean. But with Scott Morrow, again, I'm sure you guys know, especially in the regular season games, there's some offense there. I think he can be an NHL defenseman. He just couldn't be that NHL defenseman for us. And I think part of it was timing issues. Part of it was roster issues. Like he just couldn't fit. Really just could not fit at the time. But to me, he was just one of the players where I kind of had to, because even though he was drafted in the 2nd round, after that, like, scouts were projecting him to be a top 4 defenseman, and it didn't pan out. So I was like, I kind of have to put him there. I'm not willing to write him off yet, but at the same time, it just did not work out for the Hurricanes there. And the point that I am about to prove, well, I think Nikishin is the outlier amongst all these defensemen I just talked about. I really hope the one thing you can take away from this episode is Hurricanes do have a history of drafting defensemen that don't really hit their potential. They have a long history of that. So I really do think Nikishin's going to be a game breaker in the NHL, but there is that thought in the back of my mind where Hurricanes could screw this up. And I'm not saying it's going to be 100% on them, but they have that history, though. And I mean, I just told you that history of all those defensemen that just did not pan out. So Nikishin, I think my expectation is for Nikishin. Well, I am going to answer that question later, but I do think his projection, Nikishin, is a lot higher than any of these defensemen that I just talked about. So I think that is something that is good with Nikishin. He is projected to be top two. Now, you maybe could put him on the same level as Noah Hannafin, but regardless, I think Nikishin, he's projected to be that good. And I would say the Hurricanes, how they view Nikishin, knowing Brendan Moore, I mean, we know he loves his veterans. He really, really does. And I'm not saying he doesn't love Nikishin, but that's just the reality. He loves his veteran type of players. I think how they view Nikishin is I think you have the Rod Brindamore view, and the fact that, well, he's a rookie. Obviously, he's most likely is going to make the team. I'd be stunned if he didn't, but he is going to make the team. But I think Brind'Amour's going to treat him like probably any other rookie, unless Nikishin really, really shows that he is that good of a player that we all know he can be. And I think there is the organizational view that they know he can be. It's just I think I could be wrong about this, but I think there are times where probably Tulsky and Brind'Amour don't see eye to eye on things. Again, could totally be wrong. I am purely speculating at this point. But I would say probably Tulsky has a higher view of Nikishin than probably Brind'Amour does right now. I think they both project again. I think they both project him at some point to be a top two defenseman. It's just where do they view Nikishin right now? I think there are probably two different viewpoints in the Hurricanes organization. I think Brind'Amour probably views him more as a rookie as of right now, which I am completely fine with. I'm not trying to butt heads with Brind'Amour because, like, listen, I agree. I agree. Unless you are showing me very, very something special, I am going to view you as another rookie, and I'm going to take things slow with you. But every player, they develop differently. Who knows? Nikishin, maybe by mid-season, he starts to really, really take off. And we've seen defensemen before. I'm sure you guys remember with Orlov and Brent Burns that once they start off in Brind'Amour's system, it really, really takes time. So I think with Nikishin, I think how the Hurricanes should view it, I think should be more along the lines of Brind'Amour. And I think there might be that question that pops up from a Hurricanes fan or whatever is have they developed him correctly? Because we know they haven't really developed the likes of Hayden Fleury, Jake Bean. Are they developing him correctly? And I think that's a question to ponder. I would argue with him playing in the KHL that I'm not saying that they haven't had a chance to develop him, but I don't think I wouldn't put him on the same level as like Jake Bean or Hayden Fleury, just because when you're playing in a separate nation, separate league from the NHL, AHL type of squad, I do think it is a little bit harder probably to develop players. So I that question of how if they've developed him correctly or not, it is a little bit tough just because I don't think he's on that same level. So, well, I think it's just more of time. We'll see how he does come training camp and come preseason and the first regular season games. And I mean, what do I expect from Nikishin? I do expect him probably to struggle at first, but I think as the games go on, as the season progresses, I do think he does get better. And I would say the biggest thing, and I'll probably end with this when it comes to Nikishin, what I hope from Nikishin is to give himself, and specifically this season, give himself a fresh start. Because I'm telling you, when he started in the playoffs, that's not the fresh start that probably a player probably needs. He probably loved it, but it's probably not de- development wise not what he needs. So I love to hear your thoughts on Alexander Nikishin, and I just hope I really did just put into your mind that the Hurricanes in the past have kind of had defensemen like one defenseman like Nikishin with Hannafin, the others probably not really, but they have had defensemen historically that haven't really panned out to play as their potential. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys Monday, which will be our Q&A episode. So please, please, please submit your questions. So yeah, I will see you guys then.